Hey y'all! Bigfoot is one of the more well-known cryptids with documented sightings throughout the world, including all of Appalachia. In part 1 of this 2-part episode, we'll cover some Bigfoot basics and also delve into the Appalachian sightings. I'm Candace, and I'll be your guide. Bigfoot, or otherwise known as Sasquatch, is a particularly enigmatic cryptid. While most cryptids seem to have a paranormal or otherworldly origin, most people believe Bigfoot to be a primate, or some sort of flesh and blood creature that biology just hasn't classified yet. That's not to say that there aren't some pretty unusual and honestly some pretty cracked out theories on the origin of this tall, hairy, ape-like man. But we'll get to those. There isn't a lot of variation in how this creature is physically described. Typically, he's said to be tall, most often 6 to 9 feet tall, although occasionally he's said to be larger or smaller than that. A humanoid figure covered in usually reddish-brown hair with an ape-like but surprisingly human face that is said to be more Neanderthal than simian. Some regions have some differences too, like the Pennsylvania white Bigfoot spotted in the 70s that resurfaced later in 2008 to 2010. That one was said to look like the Bigfoot that you'd expect, only solid white. I'll include the link to a supposed video featuring the Pennsylvania white Bigfoot that many believe is credible evidence for this creature. Those who support the video's validity argue that the facial features are different enough from a human's that it could not be a mask, because if it was, the person inside wouldn't be able to see. I'm sorry, but this video does bring out the cynic in me. You cannot convince me that this isn't a person in a very bad mask. Bigfoot is said to have more complex methods of communication than we may give him credit for, utilizing a series of wood knocks that is believed to be caused by him either using his fists to beat on somewhat hollow trees or using branches to bash against them. This is based around the fact that many witnesses of Bigfoot encounters report hearing those sounds in the area before or right after the sightings themselves. However, some say it's much more intricate than that. Sometimes whistles, grunts, or even murmured sounds that don't seem to be human speech are also attributed to Sasquatch sightings. Most interestingly, to me anyway, is that territorial markings are also said to occur frequently in areas with sightings. Sometimes these are woven and crisscrossed limber branches, woven together in ways that seem alarmingly complex for a supposed primate. Other times, trees are bent or even uprooted and stacked together in a purposeful manner. Occasionally, a primitive teepee-like structure is found made up of twigs and foliage, and these are attributed to the hairy man himself as well. The Olympic Project, based in Washington State, discovered areas that they suspect are Sasquatch nests. I've linked their video below if you'd like to watch their Bigfoot exploration documentary. These nests look like a small mound of very small twigs and forest debris. One of the researchers laid down awkwardly to see how a Bigfoot may utilize the nest they believe he created. To me, it's just a little pile of forest debris at the bottom of a tree. It wasn't even large enough for an average-sized man to get into, and I personally can't give credence to this as some sort of Sasquatch phenomena. However, the reason I mentioned these nests is that my research indicates that the team called in a primatologist to examine the nest who does believe it to be primate in origin. While further research does show that primates do make similar nests to what was shown, I really want to know more about the primatologist and the team's relationship with them, because it truly could go either way on it being a genuine expert opinion versus an expert opinion from someone who is a very strong believer in Bigfoot, versus the old everything is a nail if you're a hammer mentality. And I know, last time I said that phrase, I said it wrong, and I probably did again, but I'm kind of having fun with it at this point, so I'm going to roll with it. I couldn't find much information at all about the primatologist, but I do feel the situation really requires someone who is as objective as possible to keep any potential bias at bay. It is said that these displays of territory can get a little more eerie, though, with rock throwing being a commonplace behavior among those who manage to get close to a Sasquatch. If you listen to Listener Stories Volume 1, this was an element when Earl's friend John got whacked in the head when Bigfoot decided to throw a decent-sized rock at him. Some paranormal researchers believe the rock throwing to be another way to display territory and warn the unsuspecting to stay out, which makes total sense. But there are those who believe that Bigfoot is responsible for deer carcasses strung from trees as a warning to keep out. A much creepier way to display territory, for sure. Interestingly, primates like chimpanzees are also shown to demonstrate wood knocking and rock throwing for the same reasons people suspect Bigfoot does. I am grateful that they're not stringing the deer from trees, though. Also, there's that notorious Bigfoot stench. He's said to have a particular disgusting smell, a strong, musky aroma with an element of rotting garbage thrown in. If you've ever smelled a bear, I imagine it to be similar to that smell, although perhaps a little stinkier. While Bigfoot sightings are most prevalent in the Pacific Northwest, there certainly is not any shortage of experiences throughout Appalachia. I gathered these from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO, which was an incredible resource for this episode. They tick all the boxes for gathering reports as they're received while exerting a healthy measure of skepticism. I'm just going to briefly run through a few of these Appalachian Bigfoot sightings to give you all an idea of what's going on in the woods. This first sighting takes place near Clayton in northeast Georgia in the fall of 2014. Now, this one I'm going to read verbatim, as it's really well written and very descriptive of the encounter. Quote, I went to a favorite spot for the weekend to get some peace and quiet and hopefully a monster brown trout. Been going there for years fishing and camping. Not extremely remote, but wild and beautiful nonetheless. It's actually an old home place that has long disappeared. Nothing remains except the concrete foundation and a narrow, overgrown road that was once the driveway. It was very cold the night before, mid-20s, but the sun was shining bright and it was starting to warm up. I made the relatively short hike down the old road bed down to my spot by the river. I dropped my pack against a tree and went down the steep embankment to the river's edge to check out the water and soak up some sunshine to warm up. After a few minutes, I heard what I thought was another fisherman or someone up above me where the old foundation was. I thought, great. So much for peace and quiet. Must be hardcore trout fishermen like me to be here in cold weather. I walked back up the embankment expecting to see people. What I saw, in broad daylight, probably 30 or 40 yards directly in front of me, was what I can only describe as what appeared to be a fully erect gorilla. Except his face didn't protrude out. It was flatter. And the hair was the color of a squirrel. Browns, black, silver, and a slight tint of red when the sun reflected off of him. He was standing there, head slightly tilted back, squinting his eyes, soaking up the sunshine just as I was. I couldn't comprehend what I was looking at first. My first thought was, what am I looking at? But the second thought was, God, look how big he is. It was incredibly muscular, at least 4 feet wide at the shoulders, 7 or 8 feet in height, a massive animal. The skin was a dark grayish color around the face. Head was extremely pointed, like a dunce hat almost. No neck, large pectorals visible under the hair. Eye color was like a shade of amber. It was squinting in the bright sun, soaking up some warmth. He didn't really see me at first, I don't think. I did kind of pop up over the embankment. I think he knew I was there, but didn't really know where. He could have been trying to smell me. I watched this massive, beautiful animal standing there in the bright sun for probably 15 or 20 seconds. I had a feeling of amazement, wonder, and actually privileged. I knew that what I was looking at was truly one of God's immaculate creations. It was beautiful. Big and scary as hell, but beautiful. Hair was clean, looked groomed almost. Very healthy animal. After 15 to 20 seconds of seeing this, I actually stepped up over the embankment all the way in view, and I said out loud something like, "Hey, big boy, ain't you a pretty thing?" That's when it finally saw me. It dropped its head down and froze. I could tell I surprised it. It wouldn't make eye contact. I could see its whole posture change. It became very shy and acted like it was hoping that as long as it didn't look directly at me, I wouldn't see him. It was like a bashful child. I took a few steps toward it and said, "Hey, big boy," or something to that effect, and that was enough for him. He turned to his left and he was out of there. I could hear the limbs and leaves rustling as he made his getaway. He moved like a deer going up the mountain, fast. Didn't see him, but I could hear him. After probably 5 seconds, the rustling stopped and it was totally silent. Then I clearly hear what sounded like someone doing a drum roll with wooden sticks on a wooden table. 3 rat-tat-tats. Very quick, very clear, and definitely not a woodpecker. No doubt in my mind it was him. He had traversed the mountainside and was on the ridgeline above me in no more than 5 or 10 seconds. Unbelievable. I never felt threatened, never felt afraid. Was a feeling of privilege and respect. I set up camp and stayed at that spot for the night and all the next day, but never saw it again. Spent most of my life in those mountains walking feeder creeks, backpacking, fishing for brook trout. Thought I knew all that there was to know. That day changed my life. Made me not only question my sanity and eyesight, and I'm not crazy and I have 20/20 vision, but my understanding of the natural world. I've been back several times, but haven't seen him. End quote. Now, I'll summarize the rest of these for y'all. This next encounter takes place near Virgie, Kentucky, in the fall of 1994. A group of 8 people were piled into a pickup truck, 3 in the cab and 5 in the bed of the truck, out raccoon hunting one evening. They let the dogs out to give them a head start, then followed in their general direction down an old mining road. Eventually, the road got too narrow, so they turned the truck around and just wait. After a bit, they call the dogs, but they're not coming back. After another 30 or 45 minutes, the dogs come running back to the truck scared, with their tails tucked between their legs. They assumed a bobcat had spooked the dogs, so they just loaded them up and started heading out. But they had only just started back down this mining road toward home when the driver slams on the brakes. The folks in the bed of the truck see the guys in the cab pointing ahead, so they stand up to look over the cab and see a huge humanoid shape, 7 to 8 feet tall. The color was difficult to discern because it was nighttime, but it was dark brown or black. They backed up a little ways and talked about what they'd seen, before finally pulling back up to the area they saw the creature in and getting out to investigate. On each side of the road were mud puddles, and in one of those they found a large footprint. It was definitely not a bear track. They say it looked like a human foot, but about 15 or 16 inches long, with a big toe and only 3 small toes. While checking out the footprint, they heard sticks breaking in the trees, and obviously this scared the hell out of them, so they jumped into the truck and left. It is worth noting, a couple people in this group of 8 had known others who said they were chased out of the same area by something unknown previously. In Orange County, North Carolina, in the summer of 2022, a man's 17-year-old daughter was home alone with their dogs. At dusk, she spotted something large on 2 feet at the edge of the tree line. Once she spotted it, it turned around and left quickly. When she told her dad about the encounter, he dismissed it and assumed she was seeing things. A few days later, the dad was walking up their driveway when he heard a twig snap in the nearby woods. He looked to his right and saw a large, dark-colored humanoid creature covered in fur walking down a path in the woods about 30 feet away from him. When comparing their experiences, they both talked about just how large this creature was. Despite many years of bow hunting on the land, the dad nor the daughter had ever seen anything like this before. Near Summit County, Ohio, summer of 2011, a witness heard several trees crashing down in the ravine near their home. When they went to investigate the sounds, they saw a creature stand up inside the ravine. From the chest-up view they had, they saw a creature with a very broad chest and shoulders, with grayish-brown long hair all over. It had wide-set eyes, ears on both sides of its head, and was making low, grunting sounds. It stared back at the witness for about a minute before making its way back down into the ravine. The witness claims the creature stayed in the area all summer, sometimes knocking on and knocking down trees, calling to others, grunting, and smashing rocks together. They also note that one day it seemed to be sneezing a lot. It is believed that it has since left the area. Back in 1963, in Bradford, Pennsylvania, a 15-year-old boy was playing softball with his friends one night. About 10 of them played until dusk before parting ways. The witness and one of his friends were walking together to head home. He stopped momentarily to tie his shoe, and while crouched down, he looked up to see an 8 to 10 feet tall, muscular creature with long arms about 20 yards away watching them. Once they saw it, it immediately started charging toward them. They ran as fast as they could back to the witness's home to tell his dad. They note that somewhere along the way the creature did stop chasing them. They all returned back to the area with flashlights, but found nothing. In summer 2021, in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, a couple was driving home one evening with their young daughter. As they turned onto their street, they saw a large animal picking at something on the ground with its fingers. It intentionally dodged their oncoming headlights and ducked to the side before the curvature of the road caused their headlights to fall directly onto it. It bounded across their neighbor's yard, moving like a gorilla does, on its feet and knuckles, but unbelievably fast. They note it was covered in dark brown or black hair and moved in such a way it couldn't have been a person in a costume or a bear. Upon their arrival home, they were terrified to get out of the car. The creature traversed the neighbor's lawn with such speed that they were aware it could be there waiting for them right now. They gathered their nerve before bolting inside and locking the door behind them. Thankfully, they have not seen the creature since. So these are all, of course, just a small selection in the vast database that the BFRO keeps on American Bigfoot sightings. But we've only begun to scratch the surface of what Bigfoot may be, where he could have come from, and how he's reflected in Appalachian folklore. In the next episode, we will cover all of that, as well as talking about just what I think about all of this and giving you my final thoughts on it. Thank y'all for your patience in waiting for this episode. I am getting everything ready to do both audio and video format simultaneously, but Georgia likes to close schools if it's cold outside. And no, that's not a joke. That has happened. So my time has been even more minimal these days. The plan is to do part 2 on Bigfoot next time, and for the episode that will be following that one to be available both in audio and video for you guys. These Bigfoot episodes were a long time coming. I've managed to make it this far somehow without talking about the most well-known Appalachian cryptid, but looks like his time has finally come. I look forward to the next episode when we can chat about some of the theories surrounding him, because some of those are wild. You can reach me on social media at Obscure Appalachia. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to support the show, go to patreon.com/obscureappalachia. All Patreon funds go to pay the hosting and software fees to keep the episodes coming. If you have your own paranormal stories, I'd love to hear those as well. You can send those to obscureappalachia@gmail.com. As always, thank you for listening. Until next time.